My name is Joss Hart. I'm 43 years old, retired Brigadier General, United States Air Force. I've spent more time in desert war zones than in living rooms flown through enemy fire more often than I've flown home. I've been called hero leader, threat, never daughter, never sister, at least not in any way that mattered. I was sitting alone at Gate 14, watching the morning crowd swirl around me like I wasn't even there when the message came through. 7 words. No punctuation, no warmth, just no place. Don't come back. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I turned the brightness all the way down and slid the phone into my coat pocket. No one around me noticed. That's the thing about public places. You can get your heart cracked in two and still look like someone just waiting on a delayed flight. I stood, adjusted my collar, and walked toward the gate. No hesitation. I had paid for every first-class ticket on that plane, including theirs. My mother, father, and younger brother. The ones who'd just erased me by text. But 5 minutes after I took my seat, the aircraft stopped. The door to the cockpit opened. A man in full pilot's uniform stepped out. His eyes searched the cabin until they landed on mine. Then, in front of everyone, he saluted. "Ma'am," he said, "General Hart, please come with me." Before you hear the whole story behind that moment, if you've ever been abandoned, hurt by your own family, and still forced to smile through it, leave a comment. I'm not telling this to complain, but because, maybe somewhere, you've felt what I felt. Now, let me take you back to where it all truly began. I didn't stand right away when the pilot called my name. I didn't blink, didn't breathe. For just a moment, I sat in seat 12A like I had every right to be forgotten. The cabin was so quiet, I could hear a child drop a juice box 3 rows back. When I finally rose, I did it without drama. Years of service had taught me that some battles weren't fought with weapons, just silence and the refusal to retreat. I followed him down the aisle toward the front, but I wasn't thinking about the upgrade. I wasn't thinking about what my family would say if they'd say anything at all. I was thinking about the look my mother gave me when I boarded the plane earlier, the half-second flick of her eyes in my direction before she adjusted her scarf like I was background noise. They were seated in row 8, my mother upright in her ivory blazer, her sunglasses perched even though the cabin lights were dim, my father beside her already half asleep before takeoff, indifferent as ever, and my brother Nate scrolling his phone between his 2 carefully combed children. Not a single one of them acknowledged me as I walked by, not even a glance. And when the flight attendant approached earlier to say a family needed to be reseated together, I didn't have to ask who she meant. She didn't say much. Just, "Would you mind moving back, ma'am?" She said it with the kind of politeness that was really a dismissal wrapped in customer service training. I could have declined. I had the right. I bought the seat. But rights don't mean much when you've spent your whole life being told in 100 subtle ways that you don't belong. So I nodded, stood, and walked toward the back of the plane, dragging my carry-on like a soldier retreating from a war she never volunteered for. Row 30, middle seat, no window, no view. As I sat, I looked around not at the faces of strangers, but at the quiet spaces where I should have existed. In conversations that never included me. In vacations they planned without asking. In holidays, where my presence was politely tolerated, never welcomed. The worst part wasn't the move. It wasn't even the sting of being asked to disappear. It was how unsurprising it all felt. Like it had happened 1,000 times before, in 1,000 different forms. A missed call, a forgotten birthday, a family photo where I was always just out of frame. I sat in that cramped seat, hands folded in my lap, and told myself I was fine. That I was used to this. That it didn't hurt anymore. But I lied. To myself, even now I lied. Because somewhere deep in my chest, I could still feel it. That old ache returning steady and sharp. The ache of being unwanted. And the shame of still hoping that one day they'd let me in. The air back in row 30 felt different. Thin, colder, like it had farther to travel, and less room to breathe. I shifted slightly in my seat, trying to ease the dull pull in my left knee. Old injury, shrapnel, Helmand Province, 2011. Still ached when the cabin pressure changed. Still reminded me that not all wounds leave visible scars. The seat beside me stayed empty for a while. That felt like grace. I leaned my head back against the rest, letting my eyes blur out the soft movement of people boarding. But my mind, as it always did in moments like this, pulled backward decades deep toward the kind of pain that teaches you how to be invisible. I was 7 when I first learned the weight of absence. Nate had just won second place at his school's science fair for a baking soda volcano that barely fumed. My mother baked a cake. My father shook his hand like he'd split the atom. I stood off to the side, clutching a spelling bee ribbon no one asked about. That night, I sat on the porch steps alone, the wind cold against my face, listening to them laugh inside. They never knew I wasn't in the room. They never asked. At 13, I tried out for the school band, practiced clarinet for weeks. My mother told me it made her migraines worse. I dropped out quietly. No one mentioned it again. At 16, I told my father I wanted to go into aerospace engineering. He blinked at me like I'd mispronounced my own name. "Don't you want something more feminine?" he asked. "Something that won't waste your looks." By 18, I stopped asking them for anything. The day I got my appointment letter to the Air Force Academy, I left it open on the kitchen counter. I thought maybe, just maybe, someone would say something. They didn't. My mother folded the letter and slipped it under the morning paper like it was junk mail. My father never even mentioned it. I left 3 weeks later, no hugs, no tears. Just a quiet ride to the bus station paid for with my own savings and a government travel voucher. They didn't come to my commissioning ceremony. They didn't write. And for a long time, I told myself it didn't matter, that I didn't need them to be proud. I had rank, medals, a team that trusted me with their lives. But even now, decades later, medals packed in boxes, ribbons gathering dust, I still remembered the silence. The kind that hums louder than applause. The kind that makes you wonder if maybe you really are just difficult, unlikable, unworthy. The kind of silence that doesn't hurt all at once. It erodes. And when that flight attendant asked me to move, she didn't know she was just the latest messenger. Just another hand delivering a message I'd already memorized. "You don't belong here, Joss. You never did." The woman who eventually filled the window seat beside me looked barely out of college nervous eyes, oversized sweatshirt, with a faded campus logo paperback novel clutched like a shield. She slid into the seat with the soft sort of energy people use when they don't want to take up too much space. I recognized it immediately. She smiled at me once. Quick, polite. I nodded back and went still. Somewhere near the wing, a child laughed. Somewhere closer, a man cleared his throat, like he was preparing to be bored. The cabin creaked with the ordinary sounds of flight. But inside, I could still hear my mother's voice clear as day from a kitchen 30 years ago. "She's not like us," she'd whispered, thinking I wasn't in earshot. She was right, I wasn't. I shifted, and the edge of my sleeve brushed the ring on my right hand, a simple gold band engraved with the Air Force crest. The girl noticed. Her eyes dropped to it, lingered for a moment, then darted back to her book. But I could feel the question forming in her silence. Finally, she glanced up. "Sorry," she said, tentative. "I hope this isn't rude, but—" "Were you in the military?" I nodded. "I served," I said simply. She hesitated, then softened. "My dad was Army. 2 tours. Used to tell me bedtime stories about sandstorms and radios and a soldier who saved him once. He never knew her name, but said she pulled him from a burning Humvee. Said she didn't even flinch." I looked at her, not hard, just fully. I remembered that day. I remembered the smoke, the screaming, the way my hands blistered on hot metal. I remembered dragging 3 men out of that wreck, one of them barely breathing, whispering for his mother, while I pressed gauze against his chest. I didn't say any of that. I just said she was real. The girl smiled, a little embarrassed. I always hoped so. She didn't ask more. She didn't need to. Sometimes a stranger sees you more clearly than anyone who shares your blood. She returned to her book. I returned to the hum of the engines. But something in me had shifted. Not cracked, no, those fractures were old. This was something quieter, like a thread tugged loose. In the row ahead, someone sneezed. I closed my eyes and tried to forget the ache in my knee, but the ache in my chest that stayed. Because for all the pain, the history, the erasure, I was still here, still breathing, still showing up. Row 30 didn't make me smaller. It only reminded me what I'd had to grow beyond. And as I sat tucked into that narrow seat invisible to the people who once called me family, I realized something I hadn't let myself believe in years. One day someone would see me, and it wouldn't be because I begged them to. I didn't notice the cockpit door open at first. I was too lost in the drone of the engine, too deep inside the stillness I'd wrapped around myself like armor. But he saw me. From 20 rows away, through a blur of faces and overhead bins, the pilot scanned the cabin with practiced indifference until his eyes landed on mine. It wasn't recognition at first. It was a flicker of curiosity, then memory, then something quieter. A long pause. Then he turned and stepped back into the cockpit. I didn't know who he was yet. I didn't know his name or why the muscles in his jaw had tightened just slightly when he saw the insignia stitched onto my jacket cuff. I didn't know that 15 years earlier, under a sun that scorched the bones, I'd pulled him and 2 others from a burning vehicle in Kandahar. Back then, I'd been Major Hart. He'd been just a young airman named Michael Stenson, fresh out of training, still believing wars had clean lines and medals fixed everything. He had screamed so loud, I thought the sky would split. I dragged him out anyway, shoulder-dislocated blood down his collar, sand in his teeth. He'd passed out in my arms before the medevac arrived. I never saw him again. Until now. Of course, I didn't know all that yet. I was still sitting in the back of the plane, trying to forget the way my mother adjusted her sunglasses like I was glare. Still remembering my father's last voicemail, "Don't stir things up, Joss. Just let it be." Still hearing the soft ding of the seatbelt sign and thinking how it sounded like resignation. The plane inched forward, wheels rumbling beneath the floor. My fingertips grazed the edge of my boarding pass, creased now damp from my palm. I tucked it back into the pocket of my jacket, the one with the faded name patch. Joss Hart. That was all I had left of myself in this moment. No family watching, no one waiting at baggage claim. Just a name on a threadbare tag, and the hum of an engine preparing to lift me out of this silence. But behind that locked cockpit door, a memory was unfolding. A ripple was forming. Because sometimes the people we save don't forget, even if we do. And sometimes, just sometimes, the past loops back, not to haunt you, but to hold you up right when you're about to disappear again. The flight attendant began her safety demonstration, voice flat and practiced. The cabin lights dimmed. I fastened my seatbelt without looking up. I had no idea that Man Captain Michael Stenson was about to stop the entire world just to remind me I mattered. But I would find out, in 5 minutes. The plane jolted slightly, then paused. The seatbelt sign blinked overhead, a soft ding breaking the steady hum. People looked up, puzzled. We were lined up for takeoff. Nothing should have stopped us now. But something had. Then came the voice. Calm, unshaken. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We'll be holding our position momentarily for an important cabin acknowledgement." The murmur started immediately, passengers shifting, whispering. I sat still in row 30, instinctively straightening my spine. Something in his tone wasn't procedural. It was personal. The cockpit door opened. He stepped out, tall and composed in navy and gold. His cap was off. His gaze was steady. Captain Stenson. He didn't speak right away. He walked the aisle slow and certain, his eyes sweeping the rows until they found me. "Ma'am," he said loud enough for the entire cabin to hear, "are you Brigadier General Joss Hart?" The world stopped. I heard someone gasp. The young woman beside me turned her head wide-eyed. I nodded once, my voice stuck behind years of silence. The captain turned to the passengers. "Allow me to introduce General Hart," he said clearly. "United States Air Force retired. 23 years of service, multiple combat tours, Bronze Star, Distinguished Flying Cross." The cabin was frozen. Even the air felt different, thicker with realization. She was asked to move from her assigned seat today. He continued, his tone unflinching. "But this woman once pulled 3 men, including me, from a burning vehicle under enemy fire. I'm alive today because of her." The silence held, but now it buzzed. I could feel it crackling through the rows. Someone near the front whispered, "She's a general." Another voice followed. "Oh my God!" Captain Stenson turned to me again. "General Hart, I'd like to personally invite you back to seat 1A where you belong." My hands trembled slightly as I unbuckled my belt. I rose slowly, not for show, but because my knee still carried the price of my years in uniform. The captain offered his hand not out of necessity, but out of respect. I took it. And then I walked, past seat 17. then 12, then 9. I didn't look for them, but I didn't have to. I felt them. Row 8. My mother sat perfectly still, lips slightly parted, frozen mid-breath. My father, hands clenched too tightly in his lap, eyes flicking toward the window, as if that might protect him from the weight of what was unfolding. And Nate. My brother, the golden child, looked up just once. His face was pale, unreadable. His mouth moved as if to speak, but no sound came. I didn't stop. I didn't slow down. I walked past them the way I had walked past so many things in life, pain, disappointment, the desperate hope that one day they'd see me. Captain Stenson spoke once more as we neared the front. In all my years of flying, I've learned one thing, he said, voice even, but full. You don't leave your people behind, not in war, not in life. The passengers were dead silent, not out of awkwardness, but awe. I reached 1A, sat down. The seat welcomed me like something I didn't know I'd earned. The captain gave a nod, then returned to the cockpit. No one applauded. No one needed to. The moment wasn't for spectacle. It was for dignity. And for the first time in a long, long while, I had it back. I sat in 1A, hands folded gently in my lap, the leather firm beneath me, the cabin settling into that heavy quiet that follows a shift too big to ignore. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I knew their silence by heart, the stunned, breathless kind reserved not for loss, but for reckoning. Then a voice came from behind the curtain. "Excuse me, General Hart." A man stood there, mid-50s, maybe jeans and a windbreaker, fingers gripping the seat back like the words cost him something. "My son," he said, clearing his throat. "Corporal Nathan Reese, Afghanistan, 2009. The name hit me like a ripple from deep water. I remembered the dust, the screams, the smell of metal and blood. I had dragged his son out of fire, kept him alive long enough to reach the medevac. He made it home, the man said, voice cracking. Married now, 2 kids, teaches chemistry in Idaho. He tells our family, you're the reason." He looked down, then back at me. "I never got to thank you." "You just did," I said, steady. He touched his chest, nodded once, and disappeared behind the curtain. That moment, quiet, clean, unadorned, meant more than any medal I'd ever been pinned. A few minutes later, another figure appeared. Nate. His hands were in his pockets, eyes flicking to the floor, then to me. "I didn't know they'd ask you to move," he said, like the truth might soften the damage. I didn't agree with it. I didn't look away. Some wounds don't heal with, "I didn't know, Nate." He nodded slowly, for once not trying to win. Behind him stood my mother. She didn't speak. She didn't smile. But something in her posture had shifted. Her arms, once crossed, now hung quietly at her sides. She looked at me, not through me, and there was no pity in her eyes this time. Only recognition. She didn't ask for forgiveness, and I didn't offer it. Some distances can't be closed with a single look. But maybe, just maybe, she finally saw me not as a problem to manage, but as a woman who endured. The curtain closed. The plane took off. Somewhere above the clouds, I breathed, truly breathed, for the first time in years. I thought of all the years I tried to be enough. The medals, the silence, the loyalty no one asked for. And then I remembered why my family cut me off. I had reported my father for financial fraud 20 years earlier, not out of vengeance, but out of honor. I could have destroyed him publicly. I didn't. And still, they cast me out. Not because I failed them, but because I refused to help them lie. Now finally, I didn't need their forgiveness to feel whole. A week later, a letter from the Department of Defense arrived. Post-retirement recognition. Another star. I read it on my front porch alone, the light warm across my face. No tears, no applause. Just peace. Not because they changed, but because I did. The elevator doors opened, and I saw my husband kissing my best friend. I made one single call, and 30 minutes later, their faces had gone pale. What do you think I said in that call? Make your guess in the comments. I am Eleanor, always the easygoing wife, the wife who made Gregory's life. My husband, run smoothly. That Thursday evening started like hundreds of evenings before, my homemade carbonara cooling on the stove, his shirts ironed crisp for the week ahead, and me genuinely excited about his important presentation to the board at Morrison & Associates, the corporate law firm where he was working hard to become a senior partner. "You'll do great," I said, fixing his tie, kissing his cheek at the door. I'm really proud of you. Gregory gave me the smile I'd fallen in love with 5 years ago. Confident, grateful, loving. Thanks, babe. This could change everything for us. I should be home by 10, but you know how it goes. These things usually end with some after parties. I watched him drive off in the BMW, thinking about the vacation we'd planned for next month, about the kitchen remodel we'd been talking about. 20 minutes later, the call came, Gregory's voice tight with frustration. Damn it, Eleanor, I'm sorry. I left my laptop with all the presentation files. It's on my desk at home. Can you— Of course, I cut in. The Langford Hotel downtown, right? Which room? Just drop it at the front desk. You really are an amazing wife. I owe you dinner at that restaurant you love. I laughed at his teasing tone, grabbing my keys. As I drove through the city, I felt that familiar warmth of being needed, of being the person Gregory could rely on. It was the role I had worn since we got married, the thoughtful wife, the problem solver, the woman who handled everything backstage while my husband shone on stage. I parked in the hotel garage, grabbed the laptop bag, and stepped through the revolving doors into a space that was elegantly luxurious, the kind of quiet wealth that didn't need to show off. Marble floors, soft lighting, the scent of expensive candles mingling with fresh flowers. The young receptionist, around 25, gentle-eyed and wearing a name tag that said, Haley. I walked up with Gregory's laptop bag and my most polite smile. Hi, I need to drop this off for my husband. He's presenting tonight, right? Gregory Whitlock, from Morrison and Associates. Haley's fingers tapped across the keyboard, and her expression shifted from helpful to confused. I'm sorry, I don't see any corporate events scheduled for tonight. Are you sure? My stomach twisted, uneasy. Maybe it's booked under the law firm's name? Please check again. More clicking followed. Haley's face took on an apologetic look. I'm not finding anything, but— She glanced around like she was checking whether anyone was listening, then lowered her voice. I do see a room reservation under the name Gregory Whitlock, room 552. The world tilted a little. I tightened my grip on the laptop bag. 552, of course. Thank you. Haley hesitated, studying me. Something in her expression told me she'd seen this kind of confusion before. Do you want me to call the room for you? No, I said quickly. I'll surprise him. Thank you. The elevator ride to the 6th floor felt both endless and strangely fast. I stared at my reflection in the polished steel doors, seeing a woman in jeans and a knit jacket, hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, holding her husband's laptop like the good wife she'd always been. The elevator dinged softly at each floor, climbing toward whatever was waiting on 6. The doors opened at the 5th floor, and that was when my world collapsed. The first sound that hit my ears was a soft, intimate giggle, the kind of laugh shared between people who know each other's bodies well. That sound pulled me out of my anxious thoughts, and I lifted my eyes to the mirror above the elevator buttons. Gregory was there, pressed against the wall just outside the elevator doors. His hand was tangled in the familiar blonde hair, his mouth on the lips I'd seen sipping wine at my family's dinner table every week. Camille. My best friend since college? My bridesmaid. The woman who held my hand through the miscarriage 2 years ago. The woman who recommended the therapist who helped me survive the grief. But in a place I didn't know about, this woman was kissing my husband. Time shattered. My hands moved on their own. I lifted my phone, found the camera, and hit the shutter. Once, twice, 3 times. The photos caught everything. The way Gregory's hand rested on Camille's waist, the way she tilted her head back in a gesture that exposed the matching necklace we both wore as a symbol of our friendship. They were so wrapped up in each other, they didn't even look toward the elevator. They didn't see the wife, the best friend, the woman they were destroying with stolen kisses and secret touches. The elevator doors began to close. They sealed shut, and the elevator kept rising, carrying me away from the scene and toward a confrontation I wasn't sure I was ready for. 6th floor. The doors opened onto an empty hallway. I stepped out, legs shaking, my hand gripping the phone with the 3 photos that had just destroyed our 5-year marriage. I was completely silent as I rode the elevator down, my mind strangely clear, even though my heart felt like it was about to break apart. I walked steadily across the marble lobby, past the expensive flower arrangements and the oil paintings, back to the front desk where Haley was helping another guest. When Haley looked up and saw my face, her professional calm disappeared. "Oh, God," she said softly, stepping around the counter. "Are you okay?" "I need a quiet place. I need to sit down, please," I said. Haley guided me to a private seating area near the lobby bar, under a cluster of giant white hydrangeas that suddenly looked unnervingly bright. I set the laptop bag on the glass coffee table and placed my phone beside it as if organizing evidence. "What did you see?" Haley asked gently, taking the chair across from me. I looked at this stranger, this young woman who owed me nothing, and realized I was telling her the truth. My husband, with my best friend, they were kissing. Haley nodded like this was a story she'd heard before in many different versions. "How long have you two been married?" 5 years. My voice sounded distant even to me. Camille was my bridesmaid. Haley stayed quiet for a moment. "What are you going to do?" That was the question, wasn't it? What was I going to do? Confront them? Cry? Beg? Pretend I hadn't seen anything? For 5 years of marriage, I had been the woman who smoothed everything over, who made things easy, who absorbed the sharp edges of conflict, and stayed silent to keep the peace. But sitting here in this hotel lobby, with photographic proof of my husband's betrayal glowing on my phone, I felt something shift inside me. Something cold, precise, and completely calm. Haley leaned forward. "Do you need me to help with anything?" It turned out Haley had worked in hospitality for 7 years, had seen all kinds of everyday tragedies, and had a clear sense of justice. More importantly, she understood how legal documentation could turn personal betrayal into professional consequences. "Thank you," I said, pulling out my phone. "I need to think this through. This isn't just about my marriage, it's about my whole life." I opened my notes app and started typing, my thoughts lining up in a surprisingly coherent way. Gregory worked for Morrison and Associates. They had very specific rules about conduct that could damage the firm's reputation. Affairs with clients' spouses, conflicts of interest, anything that could create liability issues. Camille, she was married to Mason Harrington. He was the CEO of Harrington Construction. My fingers paused over the phone as the implications became clear. Gregory had handled legal work for Mason's company for 3 years. So this would be a scandal about a lawyer sleeping with the wife of his client. That violated several sections of their professional conduct guidelines. I opened Gregory's firm directory on my phone and found the name I needed. Margaret Sullivan. She's the managing partner and head of professional standards. We met at the Christmas party last year. I began drafting the email with absolute precision. "Dear Mrs. Sullivan, I am writing to inform you of a situation that may require your attention regarding professional ethics at Morrison and Associates. I have documented evidence of an extramarital relationship between attorney Gregory Whitlock and Mrs. Camille Harrington, wife of client Mason Harrington of Harrington Construction. This relationship appears to constitute a conflict of interest and a potential ethical violation under Bar Association guidelines. Respectfully, Eleanor Whitlock." Attached are photographic and written materials. I saved the email as a draft, then looked at Haley. "Can you help me access the hotel security footage from the 5th floor elevator area? From about 30 minutes ago?" Haley checked the time, calculating. "I can give you the timestamp and angle details. It might require my manager to release the actual footage, but I can confirm what would appear." "That would be incredibly helpful." While Haley made a discreet phone call, I opened Instagram and began drafting a post that would completely change my story. No names needed yet. I wanted people to figure it out themselves. Just the truth, told plainly. Sometimes you bring the laptop your husband forgot, and you find out the meeting is actually with your best friend in a hotel elevator with your husband. Sometimes a mirror shows you everything you need to know. Sometimes 30 minutes is just enough to change your entire life. I chose the clearest of the three photos, the one where the reflection showed Gregory's hand on Camille's face, both of their wedding rings visible. I added the location tag, right at the hotel I was standing in. Then, I scheduled the post for exactly 30 minutes later. Haley came back, she told me. The cameras cover that elevator area with a clear angle. Footage is automatically stored for 30 days. If you need it for legal proceedings, we can coordinate with your attorney. Thank you, I said, genuinely grateful. I need one more thing. She picked up hotel stationery and wrote a single line in her careful handwriting. Our marriage is over. I slid my wedding ring off my finger. The engagement ring Gregory spent 6 months saving for, the wedding band we chose together on a rainy Saturday in Brooklyn, and placed them inside the small hotel envelope Haley had given me. I sealed it and wrote one word on the front. Returned. I'm going back upstairs, I said, standing tall with a confidence that surprised even me. I would leave the laptop and the rings outside room 552. Then I would return here and watch my marriage end on my terms. I didn't want a direct confrontation. That would only give them comfort, give them the chance to explain, lie, or manipulate. This was about consequences. They had made their choice. Now they would live with whatever came next. The elevator ride back to the 6th floor felt completely different this time. I was no longer the confused, betrayed wife. I was a woman with a plan, carrying evidence and consequences. Room 552 was at the end of the hallway. I could hear voices inside. Gregory's unmistakable laugh blended with Camille's higher one. They sounded relaxed, happy, completely unaware that their secret had been photographed, documented, and packaged to be sent to everyone who mattered in their personal and professional lives. I carefully leaned the laptop bag against the doorframe. The envelope containing my rings rested on top, my handwritten note visible through the hotel's cream-colored paper. I didn't knock. I didn't leave a long message. I had spent 5 years explaining myself to Gregory, justifying my feelings, shrinking so he could feel comfortable. That version of Eleanor no longer owed anyone an explanation. Back in the lobby, Haley had made fresh coffee, black, just the way I'd asked. I sat in the corner beneath the white hydrangeas, and I opened my phone to schedule the final step in my strategy. A text to Camille, simple but heavy. Next time, check the mirror. I sent it 15 minutes later, right as they would discover the laptop and realize they had been watched. Let them have exactly 15 minutes to wonder who knew, how much was recorded, and what was going to happen next. I watched every minute tick by on my phone. 27, 23, 18. My hands were steady now, my breathing controlled. I felt more like myself than I had in years. Clearly something was wrong. And I realized people don't stay this calm unless they've already been preparing for the truth long before it arrives. I thought about it. All the little things I had brushed aside. Gregory working late more often. Camille asking strange questions about our marriage, about whether we were happy. Her sudden interest in Gregory's work stories. The way they behaved at parties. Too careful, like they were performing. Gregory had stopped looking at me. Really looking at me. I had become the one who managed everything. I had become the one who delivered forgotten laptops, cooked dinners, and kept his life neat and organized. He didn't look at me as a woman he desired anymore. Everything started about 6 months ago. I smiled, but it wasn't a bitter smile, just recognition. Around the time he began handling legal work for Mason Harrington, around the time he started having regular meetings with Camille to discuss contract details. 12 minutes left. My phone buzzed. A text from Gregory. The presentation went great. Home late. Love you. I stared at the message. Another lie. Smooth and automatic. How many lies had I swallowed over the past 6 months? How many times had I chosen to believe what I wanted instead of seeing what was right in front of me? 8 minutes before everything broke open. I typed my reply. Laptop delivered. Enjoy your evening. My scheduled text to Camille would go out 10 minutes later. My Instagram post would go live in 5. The email to Margaret Sullivan was ready to send with one tap. The phone rang, a call from Mason Harrington, Camille's husband. "Mrs. Whitlock, this is Mason Harrington. I think we need to talk." I had met Mason exactly 3 times in 3 years. He was a big man with gentle eyes and calloused hands, the kind of person who built his construction company from nothing and still visited job sites in work boots. His voice sounded tired. "Mr. Harrington, I'm so sorry about—" "Don't apologize," he cut in. "How long have you known?" "About 12 minutes." "About 12 minutes?" He laughed. But it was the kind of laugh only an angry man makes, the kind of laugh someone makes when he wants to throw furniture. "You've done me a favor. I've been wondering why my wife suddenly cared about legal documents and contract meetings, why she dressed up to meet our lawyer, why she worked late when she's never worked a day in her life." He paused. "I saw the photo. That's my wife's necklace in the picture, the one I bought her for our 7th anniversary last month." I closed my eyes. "I'm sorry you had to find out like this. Better than living in a lie for another year. She'll be moving out, and she can take the necklace and not much else. I'm changing the locks, freezing the joint accounts, and calling my personal attorney." "Mason!" I wanted him to calm down but couldn't. God, I was so stupid. "You weren't stupid. You were someone who trusted your wife. There's a difference, isn't there?" "Is there? I run a whole company, and I didn't even see my own marriage falling apart." He stopped again, like he was settling on his final decision. "I want you to know this. I'm pulling all of my legal work from Morrison and Associates, not because of what you did, because of what they allowed to happen, and I'll make sure everyone in the industry knows why." That meant Gregory wouldn't just lose his job, he wouldn't be able to find another one in his field. The news would spread fast. I stood and smoothed my knit jacket. I walked to the front desk and thanked Haley. "Thank you. For everything. For listening. For helping. Are you ready?" I looked at my phone. 1 minute left. "I've been ready for 6 months," I said. "I just didn't realize it." I hit send. The Instagram post went up exactly at 7:30 p.m., right as Gregory and Camille were probably discovering the laptop bag and envelope outside room 552. The people who followed my account, mostly college friends, neighbors, coworkers, family members, started reacting within minutes. My phone buzzed nonstop. Worried friends, shocked relatives, people who had known Gregory and Camille for years and couldn't believe what they were seeing. But I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I emailed Margaret Sullivan, including the hotel's contact information for accessing the security footage and noting that I would be available to answer any questions the firm might have regarding the ethics issues involved. I checked that my text to Camille had gone out. Moments later, my phone rang. Gregory. I declined the call. Then Camille called. I declined again. At 7:52, Gregory called back. Then, immediately, again. And again. I switched my phone to silent and watched the screen light up with his growing desperation. At 8 o'clock, I received a text from Gregory. "Eleanor, please call me. I can explain everything. It's not what you think. Please don't do anything rash." I wrote back, "I've seen everything I need to see. Don't come home tonight." 5 minutes later, Margaret Sullivan called. I pressed answer. "Mrs. Whitlock, I received your email. I need to ask, are you certain about these allegations?" "I have photographic evidence, hotel security footage confirming the timestamp, and a witness who can verify it. I saw them together with my own eyes. I'm absolutely certain." Margaret's voice was firm, professional. "This is an extremely serious matter. Gregory is being considered for senior partner. If these allegations are verified, it will end his candidacy and could result in disciplinary action." "I understand." "Mrs. Whitlock, I have to ask, could this be retaliation due to marital issues? Because if—" "Mrs. Sullivan," I cut in calmly, "I am a contract analyst at an insurance firm. I understand professional standards and legal ramifications. This isn't emotional retaliation. This is documented evidence of behavior that violates your firm's ethical guidelines and may constitute a breach of state bar regulations. You can verify everything I've stated. There was a pause. We will initiate an immediate investigation. Can you come in tomorrow to provide a formal statement? Of course. After I hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: respect. Margaret Sullivan had spoken to me like an intelligent adult, not like a wife having an emotional outburst. The next morning, I woke up in the guest bedroom of my own house for the first time in 5 years. I had changed the locks the night before, a $300 service and 3 hours of waiting, but worth every cent for the peace it brought. Gregory's car was parked in the driveway. He had tried to come home, but found himself locked out of his own house. My phone had 17 missed calls and a long string of texts ranging from apologies to anger, begging to threats. The Instagram post had blown up overnight. 200 comments, 500 likes, dozens of shares. The story spread through our friend groups like wildfire. I was tagged in posts, mentioned in group chats I was in, and contacted by people I hadn't spoken to in years. But the professional fallout moved faster than the social one. At 9 a.m., Margaret Sullivan called back. Mrs. Whitlock, we have reviewed the hotel security footage. We have spoken to the hotel staff who assisted you. We have confirmed the timeline and examined the photographic evidence you provided. I need you to know that the employment of Gregory Whitlock at Morrison and Associates has been terminated immediately. I set my coffee cup down carefully. I understand. Gregory was fired, and Morrison and Associates had filed a report with the State Bar Association regarding potential ethics violations. This could result in disciplinary action, including suspension or disbarment. This morning, security escorted him out of the building. His access to all company systems was revoked. They were conducting a full audit of Gregory's accounts to ensure no other misconduct had occurred. I thanked Margaret and hung up. Gregory's career, the career I supported for 5 years, the career that made me move to different cities twice, change jobs twice for him, the career that became his excuse to work late, miss dinners, and be absent from our marriage, was over. Sometimes destruction is just renovation in disguise. Gregory signed the divorce settlement on Monday at 11:47 a.m., 13 minutes before my deadline. His lawyer, a man named Rick, wearing a suit that said, "I peaked in law school." Camille signed at 11:52 a.m. Same law office, a kind of personal vengeance from me and Mason. Camille cried. Not pretty tears worthy of Instagram. Ugly tears, the kind that smear mascara and make your face blotchy. Gregory watched with a blank expression, then left without saying a word to her. I didn't attend either signing appointment. My attorney handled everything, but she sent me photos of the signed documents along with a brief message. Clean, you're free, free. A funny word for what it costs to end a marriage. 6 months after that night at the hotel, everything had changed, but in a way that felt like a shift towards something better. I kept the house. Because Gregory was unemployed and facing the possibility of losing his law license, he had no leverage in the divorce. Having an affair with a client's wife destroyed whatever credibility he might have had in court. I kept the savings account, the retirement fund, and the investment portfolio I had built myself, while Gregory had spent his money on hotel rooms and expensive dinners for his mistress. Most importantly, I kept myself. I stayed calm in a situation that would have justified any wife losing her mind. The woman who delivered that laptop 6 months ago, the considerate wife, the one who carefully kept the peace, the one who made everyone else's life run smoothly, had become someone entirely different. I was promoted at the insurance company after my director saw the way I handled my personal crisis. You documented everything perfectly, he told me. You thought strategically under pressure. You didn't let emotion dictate your decisions. Those are exactly the skills we need in senior management. The house felt different without Gregory. Lighter. I redecorated the master bedroom, turned his office into a studio, and planted a bright, colorful garden that Gregory always said was too rustic. I'm dating someone new, Mason. Yes, we started getting to know each other after being betrayed by the same 2 people, ironically. but we both feel a kind of sincerity and warmth from each other. He looks at me like someone interesting, not someone convenient, not a betrayed wife. He doesn't need a laptop delivered, a life managed, or his ego maintained. He cares about who I am when I'm not trying to shrink myself to fit. On a Thursday evening in November, exactly 6 months after the confrontation in the hotel lobby, my doorbell rang. I opened the door and saw Camille standing on my porch, looking smaller than I remembered her. I had seen her only once since that night, across a courtroom during the divorce hearings, where we both avoided eye contact. Now she looked exhausted, her expensive highlighted hair grown out, her designer clothes replaced with jeans and a simple sweater. "Eleanor," Camille said softly, "can we talk?" For a moment, I considered closing the door, but curiosity won. 5 minutes. We sat on my front steps, keeping a careful distance. "I want to apologize," Camille began. "I know it's not enough. I know what I did is unforgivable, but I want you to hear it from me." I stayed silent, waiting. I wasn't happy in my marriage. Mason is a good man, but we drifted apart. And instead of facing that honestly, I got involved with Gregory. I told myself it wasn't serious, that no one would get hurt if we were careful. Her voice cracked. "I convinced myself you wouldn't care that much, that you and Gregory weren't really happy anyway." I felt a coldness rise in my chest. "What made you think I wasn't happy?" "Exactly, and I was wrong about everything." "Camille, what do you want?" "I want to say that what you did that night saved me from myself. I was becoming someone I didn't recognize. Someone who lied to her best friend. Someone who destroyed another family for a momentary thrill." I looked closely at her face. "Is that my problem?" "No, it's not your problem at all. I just want you to know I'm getting help. I'm in therapy. I'm trying to figure out why I became someone who could hurt you like that. But you shouldn't retaliate against me by dating Mason." I sat quietly for a few moments, letting the anger settle. I didn't want my words to come from rage. "I don't forgive you," I finally said, "and I don't want to be your friend, ever again. But love isn't revenge, Camille, and Mason deserves better." Camille stood to leave, then turned back. "For what it's worth, Gregory is miserable. He lost everything, his job, his reputation, his marriage, his home. He's working temp jobs at a small suburban firm and living in a studio apartment." I didn't know why she mentioned Gregory now, but it wasn't something I cared about anymore. "He made his choices. Sometimes he asks about you, asks if you're happy." "I am," I said simply. "Very." And it was true. Sitting on my front steps, watching my former best friend walk away into the evening, I felt the deep satisfaction of a woman who faced betrayal and chose strength instead of victimhood, strategy instead of vengeance, and self-respect instead of the comforting illusion that love means accepting betrayal. When Camille left, Mason came over for dinner with architectural plans for his home renovation and asked my opinion about the kitchen layout. Not because he needed it, but because he genuinely valued it. A small thing, but it made a big difference. When I told him Camille had visited, he hesitated and asked, "Do you ever regret it?" I thought about it. "Not at all. Only that I didn't see it sooner." He poured more wine. "Camille called me last week, wanted to talk, and I hung up." He smiled. "We should cut all ties." Here's the thing no one tells you about a scorched earth divorce. It's not the dramatic moment that changes you, not the confrontation, not the settlement, not even the signature. It's the quiet morning when you wake up and realize you're not angry anymore about what happened. I don't hate Gregory. Hate takes energy, and he's not worth the effort. Same with Camille. They were simply people who made choices. Bad choices. Selfish choices. Choices that destroyed their own lives. My role was never to punish. It was to document, to expose, to let the consequences reveal themselves. Nearly a year passed when I received an invitation in the mail. Thick cardstock, elegant lettering, embossed border. Margaret Sullivan's daughter was getting married, and somehow my name was on the guest list. At the wedding, Margaret approached me during cocktail hour. Eleanor, I'm so glad you came. I want you to meet my daughter's fiancé. He's an attorney at Morrison and Associates. They're looking for a senior contract analyst with your level of experience. That conversation led to a job interview, which resulted in an offer with a significant pay raise and the kind of professional respect I never thought I'd find again. But the real gift of the evening came when Margaret pulled me aside near the end of the reception. "I've practiced law for 30 years," Margaret said softly. "I've seen many people face betrayal and crisis. What you did that night, how you planned everything, how you controlled your emotions while protecting your interests, shows admirable qualities." I smiled. 5 years of marriage taught me that emotion without strategy won't protect you. Gregory Whitlock still contacts our office from time to time. He asks if we can provide references, if we might consider him for contract work. He seems to think his situation is temporary. What do you tell him? Margaret's smile sharpened. I tell him trust, once lost, is very hard to regain, and that a professional reputation takes decades to build, but only 30 minutes to destroy. That night, on my drive home, I passed the Langford Hotel. The valet area was busy, the lobby glowing through its floor-to-ceiling windows. I thought about the woman who walked into that building a year earlier, confused, betrayed, carrying her husband's laptop and the shattered assumptions she'd built her life on. That woman died in the elevator when she saw her husband kissing her best friend. The woman driving past the hotel tonight was someone entirely different. Someone who understood that the strongest response to betrayal isn't rage or revenge, but the quiet, systematic dismantling of lies, followed by intentionally rebuilding a life on truth. I smiled as the hotel disappeared in the rearview mirror. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to be destroyed. Sometimes justice is living well, while the people who underestimated you watch everything they built on lies collapse around them. And sometimes 30 minutes is exactly enough time to take back your whole life. What about you? Have you ever made a decision in just 30 minutes that completely changed your life? An unsent message, a closed door, a pressed send button, a torn ticket, or a whispered I do, I don't. Tell me your 30-minute story in the comments. I read them all, replied to them all, and I promise someone out there needs your story so they can take their next step.
Thank you for listening to this story until the end. Hopefully every moment in the story has touched your heart, brought you some reflection, some emotion, and hope. Thank you for taking the time to experience it with us, and hope that each next story will always accompany you on your life journey.